As I tell most people, never underestimate the power of luck and happenstance in your career. Um, a demarcation. I remember a conversation I had with my 10th grade guidance counselor. And she asked me, "Did you ever think about radio?" So I immediately said, "Oh, here's this. She must think I definitely have a face for radio, man, so I'll never be on television." But that was a seed. When you're 16 years old and you're working at a hamburger restaurant, you don't necessarily have a clue what you're going to do. But interestingly enough, as I reflect, that was a seed that allowed me to kind of see, should I go into some type of broadcast, media, or communications type of curriculum in college. The fact that I failed trigonometry had something to do with it as well, but nonetheless, that was a very interesting kind of seed to make me go into a path towards radio and television or communications. And then I played radio and TV in college. What better drug to be in college than to play radio and television? And now you're 22 years old, and you got to make a decision. What do you want to do? Do you think you could be front of camera? Do you think you could be production? Do you think you could be disc jockey? Because when you're young, you think that's, certainly back in the mid-70s, you really thought that's what media was all about. So I made a decision to come back home, come back to the good old-fashioned New York City, and went on the monster.com of its day, the Sunday New York Times employment section. And I see a job that was for a company called Hughes Television Network. And here's where luck and happenstance do come into play. I had no idea what Hughes Television Network was, but it had television in its name. Holy cow, that must be a pretty cool place to be. So I interviewed for a position in the communications services area of Hughes Television Network, which many of our colleagues now know was a company that handled production and transmission arrangements for sports rights holders. I didn't get the job. There was somebody else better than me. How can that be? How could that be? So I go home and I find a job at Keebler Cookies. This is no joke. I became a sales representative for Keebler Cookies. And I worked there for 6 months. And I realized something that I didn't have, not to say that that's not an important industry, but I didn't have the passion to sell pecan sandies. Good cookies, but I didn't have the passion. And by luck, the guy who got the job turned it down and never got the position at Hughes Television Network. And I was the number 2 choice. So I ate my pride day one, and I got this position at Hughes Television Network, auditing telephone bills at sports remotes to make sure that the telephone company wasn't significantly overcharging, because we all know they overcharge. But I was working in the communications services area. Brent Stranathan, one of my best colleagues, my boss at one time at the ABC television network, was already working there. And I started to learn the craft of satellite transmission, of landline transmission for moving video audio signals from one point to another point to get sports signals from remotes back to the home-based broadcast center. I was a kid in the candy factory. I had no idea what any of this was, but I got my foot in the door. RCA American Communications was a satellite provider to Hughes Television Network. They had a job opening. I landed that job. ABC Television Network was a client of RCA American Communications. They had an opening in their traffic department. At 26 years old, I land at the ABC Television Network in traffic operations. I said, game over, I've made it. 32 years later, I've been blessed to be able to stick around that long and be part of some enormous kind of change. Change like changing the way our network was distributed, from a landline-based network to a satellite-based network, changing it from an analog-based satellite network to a digital network, changing it from a digital network to a high-definition television network, working with our news division to employ satellite news gathering operations. It's been an extraordinary run. And the one thing, again, that I've learned, it's still people that drive the process together. So although I may not be the rocket science, although my skills in math isn't what they need to be, I recognize that it's still a people business, and driving people in the process is still what counts.